allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, it is, all right. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. I'd like to ask you to please limit your comments to the budget process. That's what this special meeting of the commission is for. If you have other concerns or questions about the police department, I would encourage you to come to our regularly scheduled meetings the fourth Monday of every month. But in a special meeting, we cannot add items to the agenda, and therefore it's rather inappropriate to make comments, et cetera, on other things other than the budget tonight. So I'll open it up to comments from the public.
I'll just be real brief. Happy New Year, everybody. I just want to thank you all again just for supporting school safety and the school resource officers and including it all in the budget. Thank you again. Appreciate it a lot. It means a lot to a lot of the families in Saybrook and I think just people in general. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. Happy New Year. Saybrook, 33 Cricket Court, Old Saybrook, Connecticut. I'm here to speak on behalf of the Chief's budget, what our fine officers do for this town. We take for granted everything that they do. They are first responders. They respond to everything. Again, I said everything. We can sit here and some people say, oh, it's not an emergency. Well, when you're out there doing a job, it's an emergency. They respond to a lot of things. They keep this community safe in several aspects. The services they provide, they set the bar very high in this town. You go to other towns, you see what they provide, not what these gentlemen do. Our men and women in uniform in this town do a lot for us. We support them, we support the Chief's budget. I ask you to do the same. We also support you. So please support us, supporting you to keep our town great and moving forward. Thanks.
Other comments from the public?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Happy New Year. Sean Boucher, 3 Blueberry Lane. I've been in town about 3.5 years, and I have 2 children at the middle school, and I just want to express my sincere gratitude for every time those kids come home safe, for the work of the officers in town, and I just encourage you guys to support the Chief's budget, and I thank you all.
Other comments from the public?
Good evening. My name is Steve Beeler. I live at 2 Willowbrook Farm Road. I'm here to support the Chief's budget, the inclusion of the SROs, and here to comment that I've been on the end of some of the officers' responses. I've worked with them. It's an excellent group of men and women here that the Chief has put together, and I hope that you are able to support his budget as presented and support our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Sure. Kevin
Yes.
Lane, 49 Cricket Court. I have 2 boys in the Goodwin School. I'm here to support the Chief's budget, as well as show some respect for the police commission and function. I appreciate the time to be here. Thanks.
Thank you. Any more comments? Yes, sir.
Okay. Mike Gilson, 12 out of One Hit Trail. I'm also here to show support for the Chief's budget. I thank you all for your time and what you do for our community. Most importantly to me as a teacher in another district is also, and having kids in this district, is the process that we go through to make sure that our kids are safe and the programs we have in place to help them get through from the elementary school, middle school, and especially the high school. And I know what a good resource that the police can be in a school system. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one else, we will move on to item number 3, discussion and action pertaining to the proposed 2015 Police Commission meeting schedule. I believe in your packets there is a list of potential dates for next year. Basically, It stays at the fourth Monday of each month. That seems to be when everyone can mostly make it. There are a couple exceptions for holiday weeks, so, but other than that, it's basically the same schedule we've been using for as long as I've been on the commission, so. If
I
there are any
make a motion to approve the schedule as presented.
Second.
any further discussion about it? Call for a vote, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Unanimously passed. Thank you. Had some housekeeping things here being in January. The next item is presentation, discussion, and possible action pertaining to the proposed 2015-16 capital and operating budgets for the police department. We do have another night. Excuse me, I jumped over executive report. Chief, you want to-
Sure, so thank you. Not on the agenda, but certainly appropriate. I want to introduce my new executive assistant that we are thrilled to have on staff. This is Jennifer Diamato. She's a Old Saybrook resident, so we're happy to employ one of our own taxpayers. She comes to us from Foxwoods, where she was the executive assistant for the vice president of entertainment. So a little bit different role, but kind of the same. And we're very eager to have her start full-time. She's transitioning into the position now. She's done some training on the weekends. This is obviously her first time clerking at one of your meetings, Mr. Chairman. And she'll start full-time the final week of the month. And I can't stress how excited I am to have some full-time clerical support. So I want to thank the commission again for that. It will truly enhance my office and the department's operation. So
I'd like to welcome you
Thank
to
you.
to employment in town, not coming back to town. And as all I can say is, when the chief finally realized he was gonna get a full-time executive assistant, said to me, there is a Santa Claus.
you accepted the position on Christmas Eve, so that's my gift this year. Moving on to the agenda item of employee discipline. As the commission knows, in accordance with Department Regulation 55.415, .14, I'm sorry, it is my responsibility as the police chief to report discipline imposed on any members of the police department to the commission. Therefore, a police officer has been issued a 4-day unpaid suspension and required to write a letter of apology and issued a final warning for violating General Order 4.16 entitled Social Media. A dispatcher was issued a 2-day unpaid suspension for violating Special Order 12-002 entitled Emergency Police Dispatching Use Standards and Compliance. And a dispatcher was issued a 3-day unpaid suspension and issued a final warning for violating General Order 416, once again entitled Social Media. The unpaid suspensions will be served in February at a time that is fiscally and operationally convenient for the department. All the employees involved in this discipline chose to waive their right to a Latimer hearing and accepted the discipline as proposed by myself.
Any comment from any commissioners? Straightforward. It's really their purview of the chief to handle that type of activity, but it is his responsibility to report it to the commission.
Just have one question. Getting into personnel and stuff, why come to executive session?
Only if we mention names or certain things. And the only time we would traditionally do that is if I thought that the discipline that should be imposed extended what I'm authorized to issue, and it would come to the commission for review.
Okay, moving on to the budget. I guess, Chief, if you could make some comments or lead us through what you'd like us to see. The format is the same format we've been using for several years. Shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Everything is there. It's in words, it's in graphs, it's in numbers. So it's nothing that's different, other than, obviously, there are some changes in numbers, but the format is the same. We've been through this before. It shouldn't be difficult to figure out or understand what we're looking at, but please feel free to ask any questions. That's what the evening is all about. If we can at all possibly wrap this up tonight, that would be great, but we do have another evening set aside if need be, if it spills over to another meeting.
I think it's gonna be kind of hard to wrap it up tonight. I've been through many budgets hearings. This one leaves a lot of ifs. You know, when we have all this new work in the new police station that's going on, we don't know what the lights are gonna be, we don't know what the water's gonna be. So, you know, looking at this budget, I'm saying to myself, you know, it's, the format is the same, yes. The numbers are gonna be drastically different.
Well, the thing that is gonna be most drastically different is the expenses to run the new facility. The numbers that, Representative Chief, please correct me if I'm wrong, the numbers that are in the budget are numbers that have been discussed between the chief, the finance director, and the architect who has built similar buildings, and with his input and input of the finance director, these are the best guesses, and I will report, again, it is a guess, until we've been in the building for a year. It's only a guess how much electricity, you know, heat, et cetera, you're gonna use. But these are the best numbers available to us at this time. We've gotta put something in there to come up with some sort of a budget, and I do believe that the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance, and ultimately the town, will understand that until we've been in there a year, it's gonna be very difficult to give very close numbers. So that's what this budget represents, is the best guess as of tonight.
And if I may, as someone who's recently opened a public building, you need to take the advice of the architects and the engineers as the best guess. We will have to get information from the chief as the year progresses, and we may need to adjust, and certainly going into the next fiscal year, we can make much more informed decisions. There's really no point in trying to argue what the engineers and architects have recommended. That is the best information we have. Some of it will come in high and some of it will come in low, and that's just been my experience just as recently as 3 years ago.
Yep.
So I concur with you, and I don't think it behooves us to spend a lot of time arguing over, discussing, I should say, the engineer's recommendations. I think we need to accept those, because it's the best information we have.
We continue to get lucky, then energy prices will keep coming
Right.
down, which would only help us as far as that's concerned. But who expected it to come down this far? Who knows if they're gonna go back up? You know, somebody can tell me that, I could be a wealthy man in a year. Okay, Chief, do you have a question?
Yeah, I mean, a majority of this document is contractual items and things that were settled in binding arbitration. So those are things that we really have no say on because they're already installed. A number of the other things, did you work with Lisa Carver and First Selectman in arriving at gas prices and things like that?
Correct.
Okay.
There's actually, although it's a large number of the budget, the percentage of the budget that actually has any give or take to it is very small. By the time you take personnel and gasoline out of this budget, there's not a huge number of dollars that are available to play with. I would also like to remind everyone that we are moving into a new facility. We don't know exactly what that's gonna cost. There may be a miscellaneous something or whatever that needs to be, you know, taken care of. So I want to be fair and upright and do the best we can budgeting, but there's so many unknowns coming up in this next year. It's a very difficult budget to get a handle on and come up with as close a number as we have been able to in the past.
I noticed on some of them, like contracts on heating and air conditioning. In this new building, we have no, the contractor has no liability for a period of time.
They do, so we haven't been, the warranties for the new items haven't been explained to us yet. We're assuming that we'll at least have a year warranty, but we'll be moving into the building in March of this year. So there'll be some sort of delta between this March and next March and the end of next fiscal year. So I want to make sure that we had dollars set aside to either continue a maintenance agreement, at least from March until June 30th, and then whether we continue a maintenance agreement with that same contractor, that can be debated during next budget season.
Okay. No, I just happened to look at that and I thought to myself, obviously, it has to be some sort of a warranty
Correct.
as far as the new building is concerned. And I was rather surprised to see that on the fingerprint machine, is it, that they're backing off on?
So for the fingerprint machine, we need 2 for this new facility. So we currently have 1 that's just in the detention area. So if you're a person that comes in that's looking to adopt a child, or looking to get a pistol permit, or working at a daycare center and you need your fingerprints taken, you're walked into the detention area of the facility. In our new facility, no civilians that have not been arrested enter the detention area. So there's a public fingerprinting station that's located at the front of the building and a fingerprint station for the people that we arrest. So we need a second machine. So there's 2 different options. Option 1 is the town, under the construction budget, spends about $35,000 and purchase a machine outright, or they begin to lease purchase like we did our original machine. So in the budget, it states that I put it in for the lease purchase, and if we get through the budget process, remember this is very, very early on in the town budget process, as we get through that budget process and the construction winds down at the police department, and the first selectman identifies monies to outright purchase a machine, that lease would come out of our operating budget. But right now, it needs to be there as a placeholder.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
While we're talking about fingerprint machines, the one we have is almost 10 years old. How long do they last? Is the technology change?
So it's a pretty similar machine that you can buy new. The only difference is there's an adjustable height one, which costs a little bit more, but it's ADA compliant. So my choice right now is, where does the ADA compliant machine go? Does it go in the detention area, or does it go in public fingerprinting? In a perfect world, both would be ADA compliant, especially in a new facility. But we believe, and we're looking to do a little research once we have clerical staff on board, to find out, do we fingerprint more civilians for licenses and things to that effect, as opposed to the 400 and some odd prisoners that we arrested last year. So we'll figure out where best to place that machine. There is money in that line item to ensure that the warranty is current. So if you lose the scanning device, for example, it's like a $25,000 expenditure, or free if you pay them the $3,000 a year. And all the prices for maintenance on that machine are negotiated on a statewide contract through the Connecticut Police Chiefs Association for both purchase, lease, and maintenance.
Unless I'm missing something, the building variables that you're concerned about, Ernie, are the electricity, the water, the heating oil, the natural gas, I'm sorry, this year.
The new building, gas.
Just those 3 items, isn't it?
Basically,
Anything
yes.
else? I mean, building and grounds, that's,
Yeah, the building grounds maintenance, perhaps you could put in that group too. There shouldn't be as much maintenance on the facility.
so that total is $70,000 or so out of the $3.3 million budget, so it's not a big
And we know we're gonna
swinger.
spend at least some of it, and we're not gonna get heat for free, so.
No, right, yeah. But I'm just wondering, is there anything else that's,
No, here again, not only the budget of the building, the other thing that I looked at is the gasoline account. The gasoline account is fallen up in the air, because if we had entered into the gasoline account right now, the prices are falling.
yeah?
But we don't know what next year is gonna bring. They might rise again. So where do we hit the happy medium? That's what I'm concerned about. If we decide that we should take $10,000 out of the gasoline account because we won't need it, and the gasoline goes up, then we gotta go to the Board of Finance and ask for a special appropriation,
Right.
which you don't wanna have to do.
First of all, in the last 2 years, we have significantly overspent on gasoline because of the tremendous rise in it. But the gasoline prices that we pay is based on a contract that the first selectman enters into for the whole town. So we don't really have a lot of control over the price. We try and estimate the number, the gallons of usage, but for whatever reason, it seems that that's a line item that is always underfunded. Now, hopefully, this year with the price of gasoline down, that won't be the case, but
Let's just hope the Board of
we
Finance-
we're not allowed to just take 20 grand and go enter a contract right today with ourselves. It's a town-wide thing that's done when the first selectman decides he's gonna do it, when he thinks it's the lowest it's gonna get. So, once again, it's a big chunk of money that's in our budget, but we don't really have control over that.
Okay. I'm just afraid that the Board of Finance, or the Board of Selectmen, or the Board of Finance, all of a sudden say, hey, price of gasoline's down, we're gonna cut you 10, 20, 50, whatever, the figure, the figure.
Well, the only thing we can do then is to come up with estimated gallons of usage based on past history and say, this is how many gallons we got. You know, fund that, and that's where we are.
I see where Mrs. Garber actually participated in some of the figures in the budget, so she must have some idea of what to do with it.
She does. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the price per gallon only matters when we enter into the contract, sometime after the budget is approved. So clearly, right now, gas is at an all-time low. No one expected this. I'm as pleased as you are, not necessarily for our municipal vehicles because we're locked in, but for my own. So I'm happy gas prices are going down. If they stay this low or they continue to trend down, clearly the town's going to be able to enter into a contract with the buying consortium, the municipal buying consortium that they participate in, at a low rate. But gambling now with reducing the gas amount, if gas goes back up, we're going to be at a deficit starting off. So initially, when we started having conversations, probably late November, with the first selectman and the finance director about where certain line items should go, one of them being gasoline, initially the proposal was to raise it $10,000. Gas prices then began to fall. I chose to keep it flat where it was, assuming that gas prices would only raise a little bit or stay where they are today. But as the chairman said, I certainly can't predict where crude oil is going to be in July, and I have no idea, what the price is, when we enter that contract. Don't forget, in previous years, we haven't entered into the contract as a town until later than July. There was one year we were paying, quote-unquote, at the pump prices, waiting for the negotiated price to come down, but we did that for a good 3 or 4 month period. So as the department that consumes the most fuel townwide, because we have the fleet, and as the fire department fleet goes to emergencies, ours are on patrol, and the public works fleet does what it needs to do. But we have the most vehicles clearly out of any town department. So when we don't enter into a contract right away and those numbers fluctuate, it affects our budget the most.
Yeah, I mean, you're also in 24-hour-a-day service, it's the only one in town that I recall.
Correct.
Okay, so your budget should be the biggest hit if it goes up or down.
Correct.
Any other questions before the chief goes through a few things?
I'd just like to make a couple of comments for context, just because I still looked at a little math this evening. There's 3 primary budget groups. There's the personnel budget group, there's the 030, 31, and I guess we end at 31 budget group, which is essentially expense activities, and then there's the 040 group, which is professional services and the addition of the automated fingerprint system. And separating by those 3 groups, looking at increases year over year and percentages of total budget, just as we said, the personnel group is 88% of the budget, and it's up about 10% over actuals from the 13-14 year, the proposed budget. So in 2 years, it's increased 10%, contractually obligated, as we all know. The expense budget is coming down. It's coming down by about 5%, and the professional services budget is essentially flat, but for that fingerprint system, which is driving it, up about 40% overall. So there isn't a lot to work with here, given that we're 90% personnel dominated, and that's the way the budget is designed.
That's a contract that's negotiated by
Right.
the first selectman and town attorneys and what have you. We are not involved in that in any manner, shape, or form. Well, the chief maybe, but as a commission, we aren't. And that, like you said, is almost 90% of the
Right.
budget. It doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room to.
But
to play with.
So the bottom line point to that is, as a trend, the personnel budget is increasing as a percentage of overall budget. So we should all be aware of that, that personnel is becoming a larger portion as the chief tries to do what he can do to hold down other aspects of the budget, and as we do as well.
Is-
So we're putting ourselves in a place where we're gonna be contractually obligated by personnel unless, and not have much else to work with, should this trend continue.
Straighten me out if I don't have this right. Part of that increase is our 2-year phase-in plan, the budget director recommended that we do. So we had a large bump coming into this year, we're talking about another one. So we meet that fiscally responsible level, but that should not continue to grow as much as it has the last 2 years. Do I have that right?
Correct, so we're following the trend that the town wants to do in budgeting according to actuals. So we have identified in this book that is clearly spelled out, which I'll walk you through it at some point if you want, what our actual liabilities are, what our replacement liabilities are. Sometimes we're on the money. We certainly know how many vacation days and things like that that people will take. Sick days are a gamble, so we budget 50% of 50%. That has worked out not to be the case this past fiscal year. When folks get injured or sick, unfortunately, off the job, they need to be replaced. So personnel budgets will continue to grow as contracts are negotiated, and employees who do a phenomenal job continue to earn raises that they deserve. So that part of the budget will most likely continue to grow from now to the end of time, as it should, because there's cost of living adjustments, and our employees are people too and have families that they need to support, and that's why there's bargaining units, and that's why they get their contractual raises. So your statement is certainly, both your statements are correct. I've been saying what you've said year after year after year, opening up the budget, that there's very little that we can do. We're a service agency, which means we're personnel dependent. Services don't get provided unless the people deliver them.
And the contract for the lovely crowd and the TV cameras, the contract between the sworn officers is not negotiated through this body.
Correct.
It's through the selectmen, so that's also not even something that's within our.
Right, and that's by state
control.
statute. So by state statute, the chief elected official is the person that has the responsibility to bargain all contracts with any bargaining units. That authority can be delegated. So for example, he brings me in on operational matters, things that happen with the schedule, uniform allowance, things that really affect the direct operation. But when it comes down to raises and healthcare and things to that effect, that's done at the selectmen's level, as it should be.
And a personnel portion of a budget is not unique to this
Oh
department.
gosh, no, I know that.
The
yeah.
educational department
Yeah.
is the same way.
Yeah.
It's gonna continue to grow, but provide the services that are unique for Old Saybrook in a good fashion, so. But again, this is just the first step in the process, so it doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room. And again, just for the cameras, I guess, is the police officers just settled this past year, and that is a 3-year contract.
3-year contract. That actually expires this June because they were in arrears by 1 year.
Okay.
Basically, we're gonna start very shortly.
You're gonna start negotiating another contract in 3 years.
So it expires next year. The dispatchers expire this year.
Okay,
A year
so we
June.
got 1 more year where you're gonna see just an automatic add-on.
Correct.
And again, those negotiations will be conducted by
The first level.
selectmen, whoever that may be.
And you'll notice in the book that when you get to the section concerning the dispatcher salaries, I asked the first selectman, what do you want me to budget for a raise for our dispatching staff? Because that affects all the replacement categories as well. So he gave me the spot he wanted to be. So if you turn to page 15, Miss Alette's there, you'll see that what we did is we showed you what their current salaries are. If they don't settle their contract for a whole year, but they get their contractual step increases, how much that would cost, and then what a 2%, 2.5%, a 3% raise would equal out to. The first selectman chose to highlight the 2.5%. You'll see that highlighted in orange in your booklet. And that's the budget figure that we used for salaries as well as the replacement costs on the following page.
Chief, if you could just address the personnel vacation replacement. Commissioner Maselli referred to that, but last year and this year, we're on a 2-year plan. bring it closer to what's actually our liability. What will be the type of increase we will see in the future after we get off this 2-year plan?
Okay, great question. So if we could go to, actually, if you don't mind, let me just step back. We go to page 3. You got handed out an additional page 3.
Yeah.
So as you can imagine, our department as a team is involved in the budget process. I asked everyone to take a look at it. We sent it out via email to our staff. Sergeant Smith responded very quickly, alluding to the fact that while his salary was correct, we apparently demoted him to the rank of patrolman, which he was concerned about. So we changed his title. Is he still there, Sarge?
Sarge,
yeah.
You're good still? So the only difference on page 3 is Sergeant Smith's proper title, so we apologize for that error, and we'll keep him in the first line supervision group. On page 4 is where we begin to talk about the vacation and personal day coverage. So you'll notice, and I did this for this year only so it can be highlighted, as part of the union negotiations, the town was successful in bargaining with our police union to reduce their personal days from 3 to 0. Obviously for other changes or other enhancements inside that contract. But I want to show you that no longer are personal days a liability for much of our sworn staff. Under the vacation category, I've listed currently what each officer is allotted by contract for vacation time. Then we took it one step farther, like we did last year, and we highlighted the people that have to be replaced when they're on vacation. The people that are providing direct services in the patrol division that need to be backfilled if they're not present at work. And those are the figures that we use to calculate replacement. This will change over time, be enhanced, it will be increased over time when the following happens. 1, when someone reaches a certain tenured level that they earn additional vacation time. So if they're still a patrol officer and they've gone from 10 days of vacation, but now contractually they're allowed 15 days of vacation, there's 5 more days that have to be backfilled. 2, any contractual raises will increase, obviously, the cost of replacing someone. There may be an opportunity for this to go down. So through attrition, a more senior officer retires, a junior officer comes in and adjusts that median overtime rate. So we'll be replacing the same amount of days or a little bit less at a lower median rate. So that's how this can be affected over time.
Question we're on this page. Sure. Do we have the actual figures of how many shifts, those shifts that were actually backfilled? Because, if you had like 4 guys on a shift, guy books off, have to cover it if, it's a nice, taking a chance on it, it's a good day.
Right.
And so you don't fill that shift. We're still budgeting for that shift to be filled.
Correct.
It doesn't get used. And then also, if the guys can still bank time, right?
No. So let me address, can I address your first question and
Sure.
then- and then address banking? So actually we'll do in reverse. So in the contract, there is a stipulation that allows the bargaining unit personnel to carry over 10 vacation days with my approval. I stopped that practice 2 years ago because we weren't even funding the current vacation days, let alone any days that were banked. So if you look at the bottom of the chart there, every July 1st, I'm faced with knowing that I have to backfill 284 shifts. If I'm successful in the budget process, again, this commission, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, town meeting, referendum, and I get funding for 284, but each one of these 18 guys gets to carry over 10 days, I now have a 180-day liability that I have no funding for. So we have begun a process where we're encouraging our personnel to take their time over the course of a year, not wait to June or take it all on Christmas, to take it over the course of the 12 months and make sure that they adequately use their time. And we've been successful with that. The union successfully bargained that they're allowed to cash out 10 days, but there's no time stipulation on that. So there's no notice, like they don't have to tell me now for next fiscal year if they're gonna cash out 10 days. So when an employee cashes out their vacation time, it's an operational benefit to us. We don't have to backfill them at an overtime rate, and we're paying them at a straight time rate, still coming out of this budget. So there is some tremendous variables that could happen in a year. Going back to your first question, I don't have that specific data to tell you, but as you know, I've been doing the patrol schedule now for 10 years, right? So I can give you some data that's in my mind. It is few and far between that we have a staffing level where someone wants to use a vacation day and they don't have to be backfilled. You'll also notice that on this list, that there are some people not highlighted that are occasionally backfilled. For example, Jim Chiacco. Jim Chiacco currently is our Goodwin School SRO. He does a phenomenal job in that position. He's not highlighted, but if he were to use a vacation day during the academic year, I would backfill him. So I would have to pull from this pool and effectively manage this line item. What we're trying to do, as you know, is properly fund this liability, so then we can truly look at it and see what the actual is. Because all we can do is look in the history and see that we're over. We've never, ever, ever been fully funded in vacation liability.
Well, I think if we're gonna be truly, like you said, to know what it is, we need to know what's being backfilled. If we could have those numbers, so that we could then say, all right, we're budgeting this much, because that's what the, math says with the 23 vacation days and stuff. But if we're backfilling, say, 2/3 of it, as opposed to the whole thing, if we only backfill 2/3 of the shifts, we could actually decrease that amount and still be fiscally liable, because the history is that we're only filling 2/3 of the shift.
So let me explain it in a different way. So if you take a look at this thing, we'll start with the first un-yellowed in guy, Detective Barnes. Say Detective Barnes comes to me and says, contractually, I would like to cash out 10 vacation days.
Yeah.
This current budget doesn't budget anything for that, but it has to come out of this line item. What I'm choosing to do is highlight the people that I know need to be backfilled in patrol. Under your scenario, you're saying, hey, there might be a day where one of these guys, one of these yellow guys, for lack of a better term, takes a vacation day and you don't have to backfill him, which means you're 8 hours to the good.
Correct.
True. But the next day, when one of these white colored boxes wants to cash out a day, I'm now at a deficit. So this is a constantly moving thing. So there's not an accurate, I understand what you're asking,
Yeah.
but I guess what I'm trying to say is there's not an accurate way to track that, nor would it be the same for the next fiscal year. So a great example is this year there was a very significant healthcare change in the contract. So employees went from the PPO plan to the HDHP plan. So they have to fund a specific part of their deductible, their financial liability. As we go on in time, more and more of that liability becomes the onus of the employee. Their contract set up that in July 1st, they can come to me and say, wow, I'd like to cash out 5 days, take that 5 days worth of money and put it into their healthcare savings account, making their healthcare whole for the year. But no one has to tell me in January that they're gonna do that in July. So the only way I can properly budget is by budgeting for the people I know I have to replace, if I have to replace them when they take their known vacation days.
But I'm not sure that's what was really being asked. You have a good idea, because you've done this for 10 years. Do we replace 2/3 of the shifts, or is it closer to 90% of the shifts? Or we know that you don't have the exact number and that it changes from year to year because it depends when people take them. But just a rough estimate, how many of the shifts do you?
I would say 95% of the patrol shifts have to be backfilled.
Because if it were a vacation day, you would know about it ahead of time, and you'd plan a replacement, as opposed to, oops, someone's booked out sick, it's a quiet day, or you're gonna take the patrol yourself, or what it might be. A vacation, you're planning ahead, and you wouldn't wanna not fill that because you don't know what that actual day is gonna bring, right? Is that?
Yes, and additional information. So vacation days can be scheduled ahead of time before the work schedule is posted.
Okay.
Or they can be requested and granted in the work week. Someone can come to me today and say, something's come up, I'd really like tomorrow off. They're contractually entitled to that personal leave time.
Okay.
And there is no record of shifts worked per day?
Oh, certainly there's a
There is
patrol
record.
schedule, right.
No,
I think what
I mean,
Commissioner
a record
Stewart's
of-
asking.
a historic record of shifts filled per day. Does that record not exist?
It doesn't exist on the schedule.
It
You can
doesn't
go
exist.
through and there's no chart that shows that.
Oh.
You can go through each schedule individually and try to figure it out, I suppose.
I have a follow-up question, excuse me. About, approximately how many shifts per patrolman per year? Do you have a figure for that in mind, or is that?
How many shifts per
That they
patrol?
work,
Yeah.
that they take off?
No, per year.
Oh.
What is their work obligation
So it depends on who they are and what their assignment is.
Mhm.
So if they're a patrolman, remember there's 3 different work schedules in the bargaining unit. It's a 4-day on, 2-day off schedule. There's a 5-day on, 2-day off schedule with a rotating day off monthly, and there's a straight 5-2 schedule. In the current contract, if you're assigned a 4-day on, 2-day off schedule, the town has earned back 12 additional 8-hour shifts. So they have administrative days that they have to work throughout the year, 12 days.
So how many shifts per year does that work out to? Is that a number you have in your head, or?
It's not a number I have in my
Okay.
head. But it's the number of workdays minus their contractual personal leave time.
That's how I calculated it, okay.
Additionally, their sick time. So if you move to the page where there's the sick bank
Mhm.
that's detailed out, they're entitled to take their entire sick bank if they're out sick and they get a doctor's note. So somebody that has 120 days built up, God forbid, is ill, can take 120 days in one fiscal year.
No, I'm just talking about the average.
Well, unfortunately, the average has so many variables. So if you look if you look at the last couple of years, so Master Sergeant Vanderhorst is in the audience. I'm thrilled he's back to work, but he was gone for 4.5 months. Patrolman Zokowski reported to the commission. He was out ill, non-work related, for 4 or 5 months. Those are deltas. Patrolman Miller was injured on the job, thankfully back to work with her K-9 partner. She was off the job for 4 or 5 months. Those are deltas that can throw a personnel schedule in a department our size, as small as it is, completely haywire.
But certainly, as a suggestion to the selectmen, it would certainly be nice to work on the contract to not have 3 different kinds of work schedules.
And that's, those are all things that are negotiated. So our tack this time was employees who earn 40 hours of salary a week should work 40 hours, right? So based on that very basic principle, which I strongly supported, we bargained with the union, I think very successfully. I think they were very accommodating to this request. People that work a 5-2 schedule clearly do that. The people that work a 5-2 schedule with the additional day off, they work just a little bit less than that. The 4-2 people worked actually 17 days less a year for the same amount of money as the 5-2 employees were working. So now they work those 12 additional days. So we're narrowing that delta. We're getting to where I think we want to be philosophically, the 40 hours of pay for 40 hours of work. And I think we're on the right road with the bargaining unit. I really do.
Any other discussion before
Yeah,
we?
no, you brought it up. Sick time's the same way. Historically, I think you're budgeting it to what you have experienced in the past. But as schedules change, people's personal schedules, there may be that one trip to Europe that one of the police officers takes and takes 3 weeks. That's not budgeted in, but it's gonna show up as a line item. And I know we're trying to get actuals into this budget, but this is not even close to being actually funded. So,
Well,
Well, that's
How do you mean
part of the
not
reason
close?
for
if
doing this
every
phased
police
in.
officer took every single day they had owed to
Oh,
them.
yeah, worst case, that's a worst case scenario. Right.
Which would be a real big problem, both
Yeah.
vacation and sick, or with Master Sergeant Vanderhorst, who was out for a significant amount of time. That brought the numbers up significantly. Hopefully nobody next year will be sick, and you'll get back to that average of cough, cold, and flu, or a family illness of some sort. But I think both sick and vacation is almost like a time bomb. I mean, it's, as far as wages and pay go.
But when we budget in here, we budget for somebody taking all of their sick days, correct?
No. So if you don't mind, we can go to page 9,
Yeah.
where we talk about sick time. So first of all, I think that the commission should know, and I say this every year because it's obviously the truth, and that's what we stick with here. We stick with facts. Our personnel are incredibly dedicated. So there are many times when we're telling them that, you know what, you should go home sick. You shouldn't be here. And when an officer or a dispatcher can't come in because of an off-the-job injury, I know what's going on. I enter my office, they come in, or they're waiting outside with this long face, like, oh, you're not gonna be happy with this. And everyone who's been in that position has worked tremendously hard to get back to work as soon as possible, to their credit. So what we currently do is we budget 50% of the time that is earned in the fiscal year. So traditional law enforcement budgeting is usually done around 75% of what's earned, or 50% of the total bank. 50% of the total bank, in our case, would break the budget. Nor is it needed, because our personnel don't abuse sick time, right? Which is a credit to them and a credit to our agency. So if you look at the chart there, we keep with the mantra of the people that have to be replaced when they call in sick. And they earn 12 days a year, we budget it for 6 days of their replacement. Also remember, sick time includes, by state statute, family sick time. So employees in the state of Connecticut that are granted sick time are allowed to take up to 5 sick days to care for a family member. So 5 of the 6, if you got 2 kids and they gotta stay home from school a couple times a year, employees can use their sick day to be with their children to make sure they're well and get them well. That doesn't leave much room, right, for them actually to be sick, outside of real injuries or spousal emergency or whatever. What we did last year, at the finance director's urging, and the commission approved it, and again, it went through the regulatory process, and it was approved by the townspeople at referendum, is, we budgeted the full 50%. I can tell you the full 50% did not get the job done this year, because people were forced to use more than the 6 sick days we gambled on them using. So I guess the synopsis is no one wants to be home sick. We don't have that trend. Some departments do. Talking to my peers around the state, some chiefs complain of blue flus or guys constantly taking a day off before their 2 days off. We do not have that issue here. If an issue creeps up, it's a quick coaching counseling session and the situation resolves itself. We have a great team mentality. So if you're someone that wants to abuse sick time, all you're doing is letting down your teammates. And that does not happen in our house, which we're proud of. So, what I've requested again is what I requested last year, and it's another gamble for another 12 months.
So to sum that up, we are budgeting for, in this proposed budget, for 50% replacement.
Of what they've earned
Of
this
what they earn in the current year.
Yeah.
And nothing for, people who banked 150.
Yeah, only 10% overall.
195.
Correct. So we're budgeting 108 days. Our current liability is 1,075 days.
Question, when Sergeant Heine decides to cash out and takes his days, where would that money come from to pay him on his cash out?
Well, ironically enough, even with your retirement, right? So that's always a debate every year. So there is an account, I believe it's an off-budget account now, I don't know that for sure. But there's an account that deals with employee retirements. So in theory, when you retire from the police department, you leave the operating budget, because you're not part of the operation anymore, and your sick time cash out, your vacation time, whatever you have left for personal leave time, gets cashed out and taken out of that other municipal account.
So that wouldn't hurt us?
Would not hurt us.
Okay.
There have been years where the first selectman, not this current one, has said to the department administration, geez, we had 3 retirements in town, we didn't plan for any of them. That account's already in the negative. Can we take some money out of this account and some money out of this account? At the end of the day, it's all the same tax dollar.
Right.
But to keep things straight, and First Selectman Fortuna has done this, it has come out of specifically that other account, that municipal retiree account.
That's good. Thank you.
So what's everyone's pleasure? Do you want to start in the beginning and go through the whole budget, or have we all looked at it enough on our own to just ask specific questions, or what's your
Well, as
pleasure?
we've said numerous times, there's not a whole lot for us to.
No, my recommendation would be if people want to discuss or query on certain lines, let's do that. But I think most of it we've either addressed or is non-negotiable anyway.
There's no one new to the commission that hasn't done this before. There hasn't been a municipal election since last year, so,
Everybody's had the last week to have.
Right.
So do we have questions? Do we have suggestions? Do we have something that you feel should be cut, something you feel that should be increased? Do you feel that it's where it should be? I just need some input here as to where everyone would like to go with this.
Another question,
Sure.
clarification. On page 13, canine feeding and grooming, and it says here, the cost calculation below includes vacation and personal leave for the 2 employees involved. Does that double dip into page 4. 4, I think it is. Where we figure out, you know, how much vacation and sick time somebody's gonna take. Is that, are we counting that vacation sick time twice?
No, so what this is the feeding grooming stipend that they get under the Fair Labor Standards Act for having an animal. So if the reason why vacation time is talked in here, they earn a different rate if they're on a day of vacation. So if you work a shift, you're a canine handler, and it's your regular work day, you earn an hour extra compensation. If you're on a vacation day or a day off or a sick day, you earn half an hour.
Okay.
So to
that's
properly
what-
calculate this, you look at their vacation liability, and you come up with a budget, and that's what's represented in that graph. So it's not talking about replacing them when they're on vacation.
Right.
It talks about how much we pay them for feeding and grooming activities for
On
their canine
vacation.
partners.
Okay.
While they're on vacation.
I got it.
And I'd like to reiterate that a lot of the expenses for the animals is donated, if I'm not correct.
Correct, so we have an off-budget account. You know, when we were successful to have Patrolman Miller and her canine partner Kendo come on board, the animal, which is tradition, has been donated by a citizen. And then we received additional donations when the Board of Finance called the expenditures for that second canine into question. Additional citizens step up and give money to fund an off-budget account to take care of the animal's veterinary costs and food costs.
So this basically just represents the dollars we have to pay the officers by regulation to take care of the dog and to train the dog, et cetera, but the actual expenses in terms of food, et cetera, is all on a donated basis.
Correct. There is a small line item in expenses and supplies in the budget that we use, and this year it's funded at, let's see, yeah, it's around 2020, yeah, 1,500, sounds right. And that's just you get some of the basic supplies, but the majority of the things that the canines need come from that off-budget account.
As well, we're on a monthly basis, we get an update on the fund balance
Correct.
from the chief, even though it is not part of the official operating budget.
Right, it's an off-budget account, it's managed by the town treasurer, and as you stated, it does get reported to you once a month. It also gets reported to the Board of Finance once a month when they get their printouts from the town treasurer.
Do we have any data to support the value of the canine division? If somebody came to me and said, okay, the town's spending somewhere $28,000 a year on canine patrol specifically, do we have number of deployments that require canines available to us that we've said, okay, the canine is the right response for this, they go? Is that data available, or is that?
So what type of data would you want?
Just the question I asked. When you first say, I want a canine officer there at that, for that response.
So I can tell you two situations that I think save the town hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So we had a case where we were pursuing a subject for a strangulation crime. When we encountered the subject, we had information that he possibly was armed. He had his hands in his pockets. He refused to show his hands after given lawful commands. And our canine was deployed, a less lethal force rather than lethal force being applied. Officer safety is paramount, citizen safety is paramount. Save the day. Missing children that have been found with our dogs. Narcotics that have been detected, asset forfeiture dollars that have been received.
Okay. There's a list of cases where
There's a
canines
list,
are
so-
required, and it's a regular recurring.
I can't say once a day we deploy the canines because we don't know when we'll have to. I can tell you that our canines are an enhancement to our officers' safety, that we deploy them as a piece of equipment. While they're a live animal, they're technically a piece of equipment, a very well-trained piece of equipment, insured pieces of equipment, but they do phenomenal tasks. So they're at the ready to respond when we need them to respond.
Do you have a reciprocal agreement with contiguous towns? They'll bring somebody in if we don't have one, and you'll do the same if...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Correct. Yep, if one's available, we can certainly do that.
And the dogs don't sit at home waiting for, that need to be deployed. They participate in regular patrol duties as scheduled by their handler.
They are truly, so we have no partners in the department, other than our canine officers have partners, and they are their service dogs. Yeah, we're very pleased, Patrolman Miller just graduated from narcotics detection school, So if you remember when this entire plan was put together, I always envisioned never being down a dog. So dogs have a lifespan of working as an active patrol dog, and we never wanted to go through a period where a dog had to retire, and then we were in a 6-month wait for a patrol dog class, another 6 months wait to get the dog certified as a narcotics detection dog. So now we have 2 dogs, one at the beginning of its life cycle, one at the middle of its work cycle, if you will, not life cycle, I don't want to say that, that eventually will be retired out. We'll have that one in service while we bring the next one on. So it's a good plan. It's kind of a constantly overlapping plan to make sure we're never down that valuable resource.
And plus, these canines serve dual purposes, search and detection, versus some are generic to detection of like explosive devices or incendiary
No,
devices.
with the state police, they have enough dogs that they have dogs that are specific. Mine that's on the state police bomb squad, that's all his dog does is bombs. It does not search for people, it does not look for narcotics, it's trained specifically for that. Then they would have another officer who would have a dog for a different purpose. If you have enough dogs, big enough agency, you can do that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we can't do that in Saybrook. So.
Right. So our dogs are patrol and narcotics detection. So when we have an incident where we have a bomb scare or in our, the latest weapons investigation that we had from the gun shop where we were searching houses, we brought in resources from the state police to do searching for weapons because they can sniff the ammunition.
I just have one other question in regard to personnel. 3 categories: overtime, extra personnel, and special assignments. Are those all essentially chief's discretion, or how do those get applied and spent?
Sure. So if
Are
you
you
look
looking at a
on,
specific page?
Yeah,
or-
page 6 is overtime and extra personnel. I think special assignment is further down the book.
Page 12.
Page 12, thank you.
so if we start with overtime, if we go to page 6, I'll read from the book. This category represents funding required for police officers who must work overtime. Overtime is defined as hours worked in addition to scheduled hours to complete investigations, create written reports, provide testimony, process prisoners, and/or collect or process evidence. Overtime funds are not used to backfill patrol shifts. So it's 10:30 at night, I'm working the evening shift, I respond to a domestic disturbance, I make an arrest. Next day is a business day, meaning that those people I just arrested for crimes committed under the Domestic Violence Act have to appear in court, which means my report must go to court the next morning. I now have to stay past my scheduled time and do my report. I earn additional compensation from this line item.
Okay.
Extra personnel. So it says this category represents funding required to maintain the patrol division work schedule as well as assign additional patrols when increased police presence is deemed necessary by the chief of police. For example, based on the contractual rotation of patrol division employees, there are times when scheduling anomalies occur, requiring officers to be scheduled additional work hours to meet the minimum staffing standards as established by the chief of police, which is currently a sergeant and 2 patrol officers on each shift. Another example would be 4th of July weekend, where additional patrols or quote-unquote extra personnel may be scheduled. And then your next question?
Special assignment.
Dave, if I could just interject here. So what you're saying is when people earn overtime because they're backfilling a shift, that comes out of the previous line items that we discussed.
That comes out of vacation. So if someone's
It doesn't come out
backfilling
of here,
vacation,
even
it
though
comes out of
they're-
vacation. If they're backfilling sick, it comes out of sick. If they have to hang over to do a report, it comes out of overtime. If there's a scheduling anomaly based on the rotation, there's only 2 guys and I need a 3rd, it comes out of the line item entitled extra personnel. Or if it's a holiday weekend and I choose to increase staffing, it comes out of the extra personnel line item.
Right, so it's just a little confusing because the actual patrolman could be earning overtime dollars on their rate
Correct.
because they are actually doing more than 40 hours work that week, but it doesn't come out of this line item because it's either backfilling vacation or sick days or one of those others.
Right, which is why I put the definitions of the different lines. So there are some departments that don't divide it up like this, and they just have one line item. Boom. But then you can't properly track it. So I can't give you an actual on how much we used in sick time or how much we used on vacation replacement. So by compartmentalizing these extra personnel dollars, I can track, the town tracks what we're spending in each category.
Can you, as you just said, as my question before, can you, I know you don't have it
Yep.
now, can you get the commission what shifts were backfilled, what extra, you know, when these anomalies came up, when it had to come, so that we can know exactly, well, for 1 year. I know it's not gonna be every year the same, but for this year, this is what occurred. We had to backfill this many shifts, cost this much money. We had to schedule anomalies, it cost this much money, for just this year.
So I don't know how,
understand it's not gonna
I don't know how
happen.
we do that, to be honest with you. So
But you
that,
said that we did it that way so that you could know.
Yeah, we have those line items.
we do, we have the line
Previous
items, so you
years.
can look at the line items, but it's not going to perfectly coincide. So for example, you, when you retired as a lieutenant, you were earning a certain rate, and patrolman at the time was earning a certain rate. If you're backfilling a vacation day, it's gonna be at your cost. If he's backfilling a vacation day, it's gonna be at their cost. So the budget number could vary.
Yeah,
But I
just
don't
wanna
keep
know-
track of,
I just wanna know how many backfilled shifts were there? How many schedule anomalies were there? that had
I
to
think
be
that's
scheduled?
an incredibly arduous task to even try to figure out.
And how did you come up with a number?
Based on the liabilities. So in the contract, you're a person that works X number of years on the job, you get X number of vacation days. We make a chart, I look at your job description, do you have to be replaced if you're not here? Yes.
But we don't know what the actual number is though, right?
We do based on our known liabilities. So budgeting is done on known
Right,
liabilities.
but we don't know what is actually expended. We know what our known liability is, but we don't know what our actual expense.
We do, because we have the budget figures from year to year that shows what we're
We know
expending.
the
We know how
dollars
many-
that
we
We
were.
know the
Right.
dollars,
No,
but
the
we don't know
dollars.
the numbers of shifts.
Right.
We don't know
Right.
the number of hours
If-
because people earn
If a
different
master
amounts.
sergeant backfills 20 shifts, that's more dollars, but no more shifts than a rookie patrol officer who's making less money. It's less money expended, although those same 20 shifts were covered.
Do you use codings at all?
So the system is, if you work additional hours, you fill out a timesheet. Timesheet comes to me. It's approved actually by the first line supervisor that you work the hours. Then as I do payroll, it's assigned to one of these categories.
So I mean, there's no, like, if you get a dog call and he or she was held over on a shift, it would be just random, like code 409 would be dog call here, or
So that would be overtime.
would be overtime, but it would be pocketed in, like a dog call.
It would, no, it would be
So
pocketed.
you can
because there's
query
overtime.
409, that would be all your dog calls,
No.
or,
There's no mechanism.
you know, how about with does the torchlight parade and those things, is that part of a?
Extra personnel.
Okay, so that comes
Which
out.
we're going to get to.
Is,
Well, no, we've already done that, we're in the cycle time.
is there a way for in the future for us to know for the next budget process what those shifts were that I'm asking? You know,
I guess I'm having a difficulty understanding, one, the benefit, how that would benefit us budgeting wise.
knowledge.
But what does it mean to you? So if I said to you, you know, on our, let's go to our vacation page, what page is that on?
4?
So on 4, my request this year is to backfill 284 days. So if I told you next year, hey, I kept track of this, and we wound up backfilling 250 days, we cashed out 15 days, and 12 days I didn't need. But because this is only based on a median overtime thing, we were still over budget, because the more senior guys backfilled all these shifts, because in accordance with our contract, they were up on the rotation to do so. So because there's so many of those variables, it doesn't factor into budgeting, is what I'm saying.
Well, it does, because it tells us exactly how many shifts are gonna be.
But it doesn't relate to any
It doesn't.
dollar.
It doesn't relate
And
to
I think it's
But you
only,
have to, it doesn't relate to any dollars, then,
it does, but I think it's only for that period of time.
right.
Because your calls change on a daily,
Yeah.
monthly, yearly basis.
It gives
so-
us a point. I'm just, to me, it's, you know, we've got, you know, we're talking about wanting real numbers, and we want real actual money spent and everything, as opposed to just real money spent. I'd like to know that the real money spent went to fill this many shifts.
But I think we have that basis because we know what our real liability is. We know how many days people can take. We know what our liability is, and that's what we have to,
Right.
that's what we have to fund.
I think there are some items that and you've heard me say this, once we get settled in, I'm gonna be all about budgeting on actuals. I think there's some line items we can budget that way, but I think this is under the liability category that we've worked over the 2 years to fund from a liability standpoint. So I get the desire for actuals, but I don't think that applies to these line items. I think these line items, we budget on liability and keep our fingers crossed, and we didn't do well on that this year.
When you say these line items, I totally agree if you're talking about vacation and sick. But the subjects I brought up were special assignment, extra personnel, and overtime. And now I understand overtime is not chief's discretion. Extra personnel is chief's discretion, it seems like, and special assignment, I'm not clear on yet.
So extra personnel is not chief's discretion.
It's not.
There's a part of it that is, so if it's a scheduling anomaly, it's not. So while I'm doing the schedule, if it comes up short based on rotation, that's not a chief's discretion, that's while there's a scheduling anomaly, I need to backfill. When I choose to add additional officers, that is my discretion, but it's based on, circumstances. So 4th of July weekend, New Year's Eve into New Year's Day, those things require additional policing. And it comes out of the line item entitled extra personnel. You also see on the page that we have not increased, despite the average overtime rate going up, we've not increased how many 8-hour shifts we've asked to be replaced. So if you look under overtime, overtime is very rarely used in 8-hour blocks. Right. It's usually an hour, 2, 4 hours, depending on what needs to get the job done. There are times when we have significant investigations where detectives are working 8, 12, 14, 20-hour shifts. That comes out of that line item. But we have stayed steady, and this chart shows, from the 2013-2014 budget year to this request at 74 8-hour shifts. For extra personnel, 135 shifts for all those years. So as overtime rates increase, we are still maintaining the same amount of 8-hour shifts that we're backfilling. So what I'm trying to say is I think that's us doing the best we can with the money allocated. So we're not raising the budget, we're trying to keep it. So I'm actually getting less each year as we progress through this.
No, well, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. We're keeping the same number of shifts. The cost goes up because the contractual cost per hour goes up. So the cost has to go up, but you're disciplining yourself to keep the same number of shifts available in that category.
Correct.
Okay. With regard to extra personnel, I mean, the last 2 fiscal years completed already, we were wildly over budget. The actuals were wildly over budget, like 100%. 250%
Sure.
prior, 100% there. Do we anticipate this to be a trend that we're still going to be under budgeted significantly?
I think so.
Dignitary come to town.
Well, here's our other issue. So if there is a retirement mid-fiscal year, one of those officers that has to be replaced, one of the yellow line items, has to be replaced. He's gone, not on the schedule, has to be backfilled. What line item does that come from? It comes from extra personnel because now I have a scheduling anomaly. As I do the schedule, there's a hole. The hole was created by retirement. I can't use the salary vacated because the salary is being used for the person who's attending the police academy.
That's why the salary budget stays pretty
Correct.
consistent. but
So
this
there are
budget
some
spikes.
times, so if there's a retirement mid-year this year of one of those yellowed in blocks, one of those people that has to be backfilled, and we put someone in the police academy, our extra personnel line item will go up, but our salary might go down. We might look at an actual and go, wow, we overfunded you in salaries. Well, no, you didn't. During the budget process, you funded the liability. Mid-fiscal year, the liability changed because you had a retirement.
Yeah. Okay.
So, one of the things that I think sometimes is difficult, not for this commission, but maybe for people to understand, the budget season in Old Saybrook, like many communities, is pretty long, right? So you got this budget, bless you, you got this budget in December. This budget doesn't take effect until July. So 6 months ahead of time, I'm telling you what I think we need to operate. The only agency in the town of Old Saybrook that's open 24/7, 365. There's so many variables in here that we've discussed. The fuel, the gas, the vacation days, who's gonna retire, who's not gonna retire. This is a spending plan. And that's as best as any department head can do.
How many people are eligible to retire?
I think we have 4 or 5 at this point.
So,
And all they have to do is give 2 weeks' notice.
So will you address the
Four.
special assignments on page 12?
Sure. So special assignments, let me just read it from the book, and then I can elaborate on it if you want me to. These monies are reserved for officers who are assigned to perform duties in addition to their scheduled workday based on assignment and/or skill. The department seeks no increase in the number of shifts currently budgeted. So we have, over the past 5 years, done a lot of in-house professional development. So we have prided ourselves on making as many of our law enforcement professionals certified instructors, so that we can certify in-house, 3-year certification period. If I have an officer that is, a great example would be Patrolman Zokowski, certified in patrol techniques, just delivered a class to the department as a whole in canine patrol procedures to enhance their ability to work with our canine teams. He was paid out of this special assignment line item because a special skill that he has, not related to his normal patrol shift, he was performing that special skill and needed to be compensated. So another great example of this is sometimes our youth officer. If one of our youth officers is working with a sensitive case, but it really doesn't qualify for one of the other categories, this would be used. If we send an officer to work on a special assignment for the department, this is exactly where the money would come from the special assignment line item.
This also can save, I assume it does save us some money, because we don't necessarily have to, if we can do a lot of this in-house, we're not sending people out to get those skills that could be more costly than doing it in-house.
Oh, sure, absolutely. So I'll give you a perfect example. We just did firearms training. We brought a tractor-trailer truck in. It's a firearms training simulator, live firearms training simulator. Don't forget, regulations for the police academy require us to do live fire training each year. Police officers carry weapons. We have to be skilled in them and practice with them. And we have to qualify once a year. So we brought this machine in, and while officers were on duty with minimum backfill, we had people come in and rotate 2 hours at a time. To do that, I need firearms instructors to monitor them and sign them off, and I need a safety officer. So those instructors and the safety officers were paid out of special assignment, whereas the officers came in, some at no cost to us because we did it while they were on shift. If we didn't have that in-house talent, they'd all be going somewhere, travel time, overtime, fuel. So it's been very efficient. I'm proud of it. We're not where I want to be. My goal is that every police officer that we have, who I believe is a true professional, earns their instructor certification in some aspect of policing.
I mean, also what you just put on was a EMR course for
Correct.
15 of your dispatchers and some of your peripheral staff, and that was it. Almost no cost
No
at all.
cost, right. Thanks to you and Phil Coco, there was no cost to the instruction, correct?
And that was done in-house.
These are all initiatives to keep our department professional and keep our people motivated and well-trained. We should just recognize that the sum of all these things adds up to another man year, essentially. So
Another
man year of shifts, approximately.
Yeah, but it's broken down into segments.
That's why I
Yeah.
grouped these together and said, okay, these are in addition to our.
But you have to look at
standard
that
patrol
and say to
activities
yourself, if we
and
didn't
things.
do it in-house, how many man years would then be required to do it?
Right.
In addition to fuel reimbursement for mileage if they use their own car, et cetera, et cetera.
Just a note, not a complaint.
No, I'm just making sure.
But to
everyone
your note,
understands.
you can't take the overtime,
I didn't. I was looking
Add
at
that in
personnel,
there.
special, and pro development.
but you can't take extra personnel either because sometimes it backfills scheduling anomalies.
I can, in my, in my understanding of this, we have budgetary access to an additional man year of of operating resource.
Right, and I believe that's the wrong way to characterize that, because it sounds like there's budget dollars for an entire extra police officer in the budget where that's not the case. So if we didn't have these line items, we would not be able to accomplish our mission. So if you added an extra cop, would these line items disappear? No, which means it's not equal to an extra police officer.
No, but that's not what James was saying.
No.
He was just characterizing or quantifying it, that in order to run the department, besides the straight salaries that we have to do, we also have this other obligation to make things run properly that comes to about.
Another head.
Yeah, I mean, you just can't say, hey, listen, I got 25 police officers, and I can do everything with that.
Correct. And if I had 26, I could wipe out 4 line items.
No, you cannot.
Not the case.
No.
And that's what I just want to
No,
make
it'd
sure.
be 26, you'd have the cost of 27, so.
Right.
yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
right. So the only real big addition we have personnel is the computer technology, we don't call it computer, information technology, whatever. Could you, IT personnel,
Sure.
speak to that a little bit?
So technically not new because we're doing it now. So that was brought to the commission, you know, upon the retirement of Sergeant Gardner. We talked about how we're
Right.
funding it. It's new as a line item.
As a
in the
line
budget.
item.
So, you know, if we go back a couple years ago when we were doing the workshops for every phase of the department, information technology was one of the workshops that we did. And I think people at that point were maybe taken back at how much information technology plays a role in policing. You know, from the start of the 911 call, to touching the radio, to fingerprinting someone, it all has an information technology impact. So what we have elected to do, and again, this came in front of the commission at the time, was pay a person. Right now, the position's filled by Sergeant Gardner, but this isn't Sergeant Gardner specific. We're choosing to have a stipend position of $45,000, which is equal to the IT position here at Town Hall and equal to a similar stipend position at the Board of Education to manage our information technology program. I was talking with Commissioner Stewart today. Are there potential municipal benefits of hiring 1 or 2 full-time IT people for the entire town, or tiering it? That we have an executive IT person and kind of a first stop, my mouse isn't working, let's fix it kind of person? Sure, but right now there's no town initiative to do that. So we got 18 servers. We're highly dependent on information technology. Right now, this model is working. If Sergeant Gardner were to leave, or we were to choose not to reemploy Sergeant Gardner, I see this stipend staying the same. But unless we bring in someone with that operational knowledge or that cross-training in between end user and databases and servers, I see a contractual line item going up for a third-party vendor that this stipend person would call. I can fix your laptop, but the server's down, or you have to rebuild the SQL database. I need this professional to come in and do this, kind of thing. So right now, we're in a good place, but it's still in experimental stages. I mean, we're 3 months into this plan. So with the transition to the new building, you have to watch it unfold.
When, some point in the future, when Sergeant Gardner decides that he's really going to retire
Retire,
from doing work, do we have to hire someone who has knowledge of the police operations to do this IT, or is it something that can just be handled by anyone who knows how to run servers and?
Well, yes and no. I think probably when we put out that job description, it's gonna say, desired, knowledge of police operations. So you're not teaching someone about our culture and then also teaching them about our infrastructure. So it would be nice if some of that, but there will be no requirement to be a certified law enforcement officer. So, since becoming chief, I've tried to civilianize much of the department, for lack of a better term. So, we went from police officers doing school traffic all the time to lower costing community service officers. We took almost a full-time, or almost definitely dedicated part-time animal control program, brought it down to a per diem pay-as-we-go type program. And the information technology is another example of that, where we are not backfilling it with a full-time employee who's a certified law enforcement officer. We're trying to do it with a civilian on a per diem stipend basis.
Even though we call him Sergeant Gardner, he is a civilian.
He will always be Lieutenant Stewart. You never lose your rank.
Is there a way for us as a commission, if we choose, to back a town-wide IT guy, for us to kind of start moving that forward? I know now we're in the middle of it, wouldn't work right now, but for like next year, if we, as a commission, decided, hey, you know, why don't, we would support being part of a town-wide IT guy. How could we push that forward to the town?
So I think we can recommend it this year, right? So during the budget process, you know, when you folks, this comes to you as, you know, the chief's budget, which is a compilation of teamwork amongst the dedicated staff members we have. Once it hits your table and you adopt it, it becomes the police commission's budget. So when that's delivered to the first selectman by charter, by January 15th, we can certainly add something that says, hey, when we come to this line item, we would not be opposed to removing that completely from our budget or funding some part of a full-time IT person for the town. The operational caveat I put on that is, you can do whatever you want with IT, as long as our stuff works. We're mission critical. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, if nothing can print, that's bad. Or if 911 isn't transferring to the CAD and that's not transferring to our live scan APHIS machine, that's bad. And someone needs to come in and fix it. So as long as that element can be met,
Yeah, I think
I'm fine.
that's absolutely necessary. I
Yep.
mean, we can't go down.
No.
And say, well, we'll wait till the guy.
wait till
comes in.
Monday.
Yeah, at 8 o'clock.
So right now, I
Yeah.
think that this is the most cost-effective way to handle information technology for two reasons. One, it's not a position that requires healthcare benefits. Two, of the person serving in the position. So sometimes you have personnel with talents that you get to use, and when that void is gone, you relook at the plan. When the void disappeared, and I knew I was transferring into a new building, we couldn't afford to lose that operational and intellectual, you know, property, if you will, that he has of our system. So it would have been the wrong time. Once we're in the new building, is that a time to explore it? Perhaps. So we can relay that when we sit with the selectmen and say, more than happy to see a full-time or 1.5 people is probably what the town truly needs.
But as far as history goes, there was a couple years ago when we did make that proposal because Sergeant Gardner was, for whatever reason, being loaned to the town to take care of their IT, and the selectman's office decided not to go that way.
So,
Different administration since then,
No.
so.
no, same
No.
administration.
Oh, that's,
No.
I thought that was in the
No.
other base administration.
So here's my politically correct answer. I'm gonna try to do that now.
All right?
Sometimes there's a stigma with the police department. An unnecessary assigned stigma. So do I think that was working? The answer is absolutely positively it was. But there was a stigma about having a cop do information technology work in town hall. Now that you remove the certified cop aspect, is there less of a stigma to have one civilian do both? Maybe. But was it working before? Absolutely, for both agencies.
You know, not to, you know, I personally, and this is just strictly personal me, I would love if Michael was the guy. You know, I mean, he comes with the talent, he comes with the background, he comes with the knowledge. Perfect guy. You couldn't raise a guy for a spot.
The Board of Ed stole him
Right.
and Trent. Just want that on the
But if.
Yes, member of the Board of Ed.
But if,
Yes, I'm like, hey, you know.
so I do that to put my
Yeah.
my support behind Mike. But say Michael decides to move to Canada, all
Absolutely.
right? And so we need, the town gets a guy. You know, it could be 5 guys from a company. I mean, as long as we get served at 3 in the morning, within a half hour of our phone call, I don't care how many people they have on staff
Exactly.
for that kind of thing, at least me.
The town's big enough to have an IT help desk person that
Yeah.
can handle like a tier 1 issue,
Yeah.
and someone who's like a tier 2, and then any tier 3 type complaints are outside vendors. But we're not there yet as a business, right? So even if you look at the history of the town of Old Saybrook, No one was dedicated to information technology until we shared Sergeant Gardner.
That's right.
And now Larry Hayden, who's doing a phenomenal job for the municipal government side of the house here at Town Hall. There was no one dedicated. Before that, it was Roland Lane, who was executive assistant and IT guy. And before that, it was Rich Powers, kind of helping out Roland Lane, who was ever in that position, right? So I think that as we evolve as a business of the town of Old Saybrook, the need of information technology is certainly not going away. And I think that as a municipality as a whole, we're gonna have to start paying more attention to that. But I'm all for streamlining services, and again, as long as our needs are met,
Yeah,
on a 911 type emergency, fine.
well, I would like to see that we make that proposal to the selectmen with them. That, hey, if you can find a more efficient way, cost effective.
As long as it meets our operational
Meets
needs.
our operational.
I would suggest that we put that on our agenda for our January meeting, and we can discuss it further.
Or do we want to do that as part of this budget, or do you want to do, does the board want to do that separate?
So, if you want my quick recommendation, I would recommend that you support the $45,000 in this line item, with the caveat of, if the town chose to migrate to a full-time information technology person who could meet our operational demands, the commission would be in favor of that.
Of just taking our money and putting it over to you and do what you want to do. Yeah.
As long as it meets our, my concern is the operation,
I
the
agree
public
with
safety
you. I
operation.
agree with you 100%. As long as the guy, he could do it from his house if he wants to, at least from my aspect, as long as it gets fixed when we need it fixed.
Correct. And quite frankly, we've always relied on one person. It should never be that way, right? There needs to be a redundancy for a position this important. So I think it's a global discussion. Maybe it's a global discussion with the Board of Education. We all have computers, we all have servers,
Yeah.
Again, it's that stigma. Should we all be involved with each other? I see it as one tax dollar, one business. So if we can build efficiencies, let's build them.
Yeah, I mean, the Board of Education is a little bit different with the police services. If it's just a typical laptop, you could come into it, you could network into it. Something like your data, depending what part of your IT, you get into the data bank and the criminal justice portion of it, you can't really network into it.
Correct.
So you're gonna have to have somebody on site, on call, to do that portion of it. So as long as it fulfills the needs townwide, then we get what we want then.
But as far as the budget goes, we need to keep a line item
Oh,
in
definitely.
there
Absolutely,
because.
yes. Otherwise, I don't know what we would do.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Sorry, all lines of business.
Right.
You've reached
Well, it's
a
not a
number that's
working
been
number.
you've reached a
don't
number
forget,
that's been discontinued.
And if somebody has an idea, we down in June, we'll come up with it.
Right.
So.
I mean, we're in a day and age where if the camera inside the car is not working, we don't deploy the vehicle, because it becomes a potential liability for the town. Because the new level of expectation is scenes are videotaped, car stops are videotaped. So if there's another vehicle to use, we use that vehicle instead of that primary car. It's just what we do.
Okay. Could I suggest that if and when we come to a vote tonight, you add that into the motion? So that it can be done as a package. Okay, moving along. Does anyone have any further questions?
The only other thing, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I
Yeah, go ahead.
just to point out, is building and ground maintenance on page 21. So again, an unknown with the new building. There has not been a decision made on how the new building is going to be maintained. So let me explain how our current building is maintained, and how it's budgeted, and why I think it's a little bit off. And I think that everyone in the political chain agrees that just no one knows how to fix it at this point. So we have, for lack of a better word, two custodians. So we have Patrick Hanley, who works 25 hours a week. During his 25 hours a week, he's assigned to clean the building and handle anything else that comes up. It could be shuttling a car back and forth to Saybrook Ford. Each and every day, he directs traffic at the end of high school to get the buses in and out to make that more efficient. So in his 25-hour cleaning week, and he's a union, AFSCME union employee, he does all those different things. His salary, if you will, his part-time salary, comes out of the town hall maintenance budget, although he does nothing for the rest of the departments in town. He works exclusively for us. Then we have Jim Schneider, our dancing traffic cop, who works an additional 15 hours paid for out of the town hall maintenance budget to clean our facility. So as a whole, our current facility, 25-hour person, and the 15-hour person. The 25-hour person does other things other than clean, and the 15-hour person does straight cleaning. Enter into the picture a brand-new $10 million facility, something clearly that we have to maintain. The town has a decision to make. Are we going to hire a full-time custodian? Are we gonna keep a hybrid system where we have a part-time custodian that cleans sensitive area of the building, and we contract out a professional cleaning service to do the areas of the building that are not sensitive? Are we going to ask the Board of Education if they're interested in serving our building like they do this? No decision has been made. I have asked if we're going to maintain at least a part-time custodian with a service, that part-time custodian should be included in our budget. Will that increase our budget? Yes. But does it give a transparent picture of what it costs to run the police department? Yes, and that's what we should be doing for the citizens. So that'll be conversations that are had after you approve it through the budget process. If they decide that we're going to contract out cleaning, that's gonna have to come somewhere. I'm assuming it's gonna come out of the building and ground maintenance budget. So the lieutenant and I recently have gone through the schematic of the new building. We've highlighted areas that we would feel comfortable if a contracted service cleaned, and areas where we want our own personnel to be in. Roll call rooms, training rooms, squad rooms, where sensitive information could be either left out or posted that we would want, our own personnel to view rather than a cleaning company.
How is the outside of the current building maintained, cut, grass cut, et cetera? Does the town employees do that? I know that there's some areas in town where the town has contracted that out to outside vendors as opposed to just Public Works doing it. So how is that being handled today?
Well, in the beginning, our lawn was getting mowed quite frequently because apparently the person who mowed it for our landlord was still mowing it, and the town was coming to mow it. So we had a well-manicured lawn at our rented facility. Now it's done just by the town. The owners are still doing it, okay. We trim bushes. We have to do the weed whacking, if you will, around the building. So there is some limited outside maintenance, clearly shoveling the sidewalks when they're putting down the salt and sand. That's still all on us.
On the 15
Police
to
department.
25 hour
Correct.
people.
So basically, at this point, there's no, do you anticipate that there's already been any conversations yet as to whether that's gonna happen at the new facility as well? Is the town going to maintain the outside, et cetera, or?
So I would imagine as with any town facility, they're gonna mow the lawn. We'll probably take care of it.
Well, that's my question, because
Right.
some facilities, they don't.
Well, some facilities they contract out with.
Right.
But that's all under one, I think it's like grass mowing or mowing line item.
So it's not gonna impact, my point is,
It's not gonna impact
our
our budget.
Okay.
Maintaining probably our flower beds and landscaping, that will come out of our budget.
Okay.
Any of the snow removal type activities that aren't done with a town truck, shoveling, snow blower, sidewalks, that type of thing, that will all be us. But while the conversation of let's getting a cleaning service to clean the non-sensitive areas of the building has been discussed, we have no quotes yet, because we haven't built an RFP to get a response. We don't know what that is. So that's why we are going to unofficially now gonna take the map we made, using the schematic of the building and various color highlighters, and go to some of the professional cleaning companies and say, for this square footage, this many lavatories, this many showers, how much for doing this 5 days a week, but doing this 7 days a week, and that type of thing.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is that could be a line item that gets increased along the way after you approve the budget and pass it on.
Part of the problem with doing the budget process, so particularly when we're trying to move into a new building in the middle of that whole process.
I mean, in theory, between you approving this budget and it even making it to the first meeting of the Board of Finance, we could have a retirement. This entire budget changes. And I'll redo everything, brief the commission on it, and hand the Board of Finance the latest and greatest, data that I have. It's a spending plan made 6 months out at the start of a business year.
Further discussion, questions, et cetera, et cetera?
I just have a question about the vehicle maintenance. You know, we went into a new program where basically we turned over the whole fleet, so everything is now under warranty, and we expected maintenance to go down. Is that expectation been met and something that we're gonna count on for next year?
Yeah, so we say that by knocking on wood when we talk about vehicle maintenance. But we promised the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and this commission, that if we entered into that lease purchasing agreement, we would cut our vehicle maintenance budget in half, from 30,000 to 15,000. We've done that, and to date, that seems to be working very well. So I still have half a year to go, and I'm hoping it stays that way.
But we're pretty much off of most warranty at this
No,
point?
we still have a lot of warranties, but there are, things that creep up that aren't necessarily warranty. Oil changes, wipers, some of the brakes clearly not under warranty. That kind of thing.
And some of the vehicles that weren't in the fleet that were not part of that program.
Correct. Are not under warranty, and therefore, any expense comes out of vehicle maintenance.
Towards the back of the book, as I call them, the smaller miscellaneous type items, there's virtually no change from last year, even though obviously things have gone up. Other than the fingerprint machine, I don't.
We talked about last year, I think they brought it up, OSHA stuff. What did you buy with that last year? I know we had Ebola and everything else.
So,
Which, that's what it's for.
right, Ebola came out of nowhere,
Yep.
right? And we had a lot of requirements, as you know, working for the hospital that changed almost daily for different protective, personal protective equipment that we had to buy. So all of that came out of that line item. So suits, masks, filters for the N95 masks, the respirators, all that.
And wasn't there something that you bought? Police department, Homeland Security, fire department, and ambulance or something, you all bought?
Correct. So as part of the Ebola standards, all first responders had to have a fit testing done of a protective respirator mask. And the fire department owns the machine because they do to save money, all the fit testing of their SCBA masks. So there's an attachment you can buy for their machine to do the fit testing thing. So the police officers needed it, the firefighters needed it, the ambulance association needed it. So I got together with all the service chiefs, the police chief and the emergency management director, get along great. Then the fire chief and the ambulance director, we decided to buy one, split the cost among 4 budgets, and now the town has that resource to protect our first responders.
But basically, the vast number of dollars that, as small as they are, that we can really affect, if you look through the back of the book, they're all 0 increases. So, unless someone feels very strongly that we need to increase and or decrease one of those line items, it's exactly the same, even though, some of these things I'm sure have gone up in cost in a year. Apparently, prisoner care is the same, so I guess they've been downgraded at McDonald's.
It's Hot Pockets.
Oh,
We buy, and it's not even Hot Pockets, we buy the generic Stop and Shop brand. So as you hear the cell door close, you hear Hot Pockets, and that's what you get.
so there's really nothing in those categories that I can see that's really even a discussion, unless someone has a strong feeling. So that's pretty much it, unless someone has other questions. I'd just like to make a comment about the state and courts continue to impose new regulations, new demands on the police department for all sorts of things, and of course, they don't fund any of that. So that's becoming a real problem, trying to manage budgets, and then all of a sudden the state will come out with new regulation, or a court ruling will come down and say you now have to do this. You have to try and find somebody to do it, find the money to do it. So that's an additional challenge almost on a yearly basis now with, and only getting worse. So that's not specific to any budget line item here, but, you know, it's always a challenge to find personnel and money to do those things. So, do we have any other further discussion that anyone would like to? I know we didn't go from front to back, page to page, but you've had it for a week, you're used to the format, so.
The only thing I can just mention real quickly, if you go back to page 3, one of the enhancements for the bargaining unit as well as the town is we were successful in reducing how many steps a police officer has from 5 to 3. So what that does is it takes away a lot of the conversation on why that personnel item fluctuates at a different percentage than the contractual raise. So once everyone reaches their top step, which they do in about 3.5 years, if everyone was at top step right now, and there was a 3% raise, that line item would only go up 3%. As opposed to explaining why they got a 3% raise, but it goes up 5%, type of thing. So we're eager to watch that happen.
So what's everyone's pleasure? Do you feel you need to digest this more and reconvene Monday night, or are we ready to take a vote, or?
Just one last question. Shows steps for all your officers, everybody under you. I know we haven't spoke about anything, but what I'm looking through this is you're not asking for any increase as chief.
Correct. I requested no salary increase for myself.
Any other questions, comments? Is everyone ready to vote, or would you like to digest this all and meet again on Monday? I think it was Monday that we had reserved?
I move the question.
Yes,
I move the question.
okay. Do I have a motion other than you want to add to that? About your
Oh, yeah,
technology?
yeah, I would like that, as part of our forwarding of this budget, if we vote on it and approve it, that it be forwarded to the first selectman's office and the Board of Finance, with the caveat that the information technology line item be available for their, I guess, use as if a town-wide IT person is implemented within that fiscal year. As long as that IT guy.
I was about to add to that. I thought you were done.
I'll
We're
sit
gonna add
back
something.
Suits our operational needs.
So do you need a properly worded motion?
I would love
Yeah.
one
What
that
was
includes.
wrong with that? So
that was perfect, but I
So
would
I moved
love.
the question, but I didn't make the motion, so I'll make the motion now, just to.
Okay.
So, I move that we adopt the chief of police operational budget
Include the number.
And
in the amount of,
operational and capital.
don't they have two separate
If
votes?
if we could do two separate
Yeah,
motions.
right,
one for
two separate
operational.
cases,
Okay.
yeah. In the amount of $3,324,790, with the understanding that if during the budget process, the town were to develop a plan that would include an IT person that meets our operational needs, we would revisit that $45,000 line item and work with them on that.
It's kind of a little clearer.
Well, no, we just need to put the money in there. That's.
But I mean, besides, we could turn over the whole amount. We've already figured that 45,000 works for us to do our thing. We could make that available to them. It may be less if all of us get together.
As long as our operational needs are met,
Right.
I don't care.
Yeah.
It's a big if. Because it's gotta be
Well, there are lots of
20
businesses that
24/7,
Run.
365.
24/7, so.
All right, well, I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay, any abstentions? Motion passes.
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the chief's capital budget in the amount of $94,000.
Which, by the way, is just the lease payment.
On the fleet.
Yep.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
You have agenda items.
Oh, wait a minute, everybody forget something here?
Comments?
Oh, excuse me, comments from the public.
And this means that we will not be meeting next.
Yes, and that, this would mean that a previously secured facility here will no longer be.
Two meetings that were scheduled, so we can cancel both those special meetings.
Yes, all of, any further,
January 12th and January 19th.
See you on the
those
26th.
meetings would therefore be canceled. So then our next meeting would be our regularly scheduled January meeting, which is the 26th, and then we'll just go follow the schedule that we approved earlier in the evening from there forward.
So
Obviously, subject to a special meeting if there's one becomes necessary, as we've always done in the past.
So what we will do as a department is we will remake the booklets. Obviously, they don't say draft on them. You'll be issued fresh copies, one that called Sergeant Smith. Other than that, there's no additional changes. These will be delivered to the finance director and the first lieutenant in accordance with the charter. We will also continue our practice of giving this to each member of the Board of Finance. So they have it technically at the selectmen round, but they have it to review and understand and be able to ask questions while they're at.
Any comments from the public on the budget process or budget that we just approved? Yes, sir.
I'd like to thank the commission for supporting our police services and taking the time that you guys do out of your own schedules and your own lives for what you do for this town. And have a happy and healthy, safe new year.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
I also would just like to reiterate Sal's statements here. It was an honor today to watch you guys work, proud of the results and the questions and the answers that came forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, now I can entertain a motion to adjourn. Everyone wants to stay here all night?
Seconded.
I thought I would. All in favor? Aye.